I didn't know I was always the backup plan. I didn't even know that was a thing you could be while still being someone's boyfriend. If you'd asked me back then, I would have told you we were fine. Maybe not perfect, but real. We talked every day. We saw each other often enough. She said she cared about me. She said I made her feel safe. I believed that meant something. I just didn't realize safety wasn't the same as being chosen. At the beginning, everything felt normal. The kind of normal you don't question because nothing hurts yet. She'd text me good morning. I'd call her at night. We had inside jokes, routines, little habits that made the relationship feel solid. When something felt off, I told myself that's just how relationships are. They're not movies. They don't always feel exciting. I was proud of being understanding. I wore it like a badge. If she was tired, I didn't push. If she needed space, I gave it. If plans changed last minute, I adjusted without complaining. I told myself that was what being mature looked like. Sometimes she'd say things like, "You're so patient with me," or "I don't know what I'd do without you." And those words mattered to me more than I admitted. They made me feel necessary, needed, important. That's probably where it started. There was another guy, but he didn't arrive suddenly. He was just always there. In stories, in conversations, in casual mentions that felt harmless. He called today. He checked on me. He knows me so well. Always followed by, "Don't worry about him." And I didn't. At least not at first. I didn't want to be that guy. The insecure boyfriend. The one who questions every male name that comes up. She never hid the fact that they talked. In fact, she was almost proud of how open she was about it. Like transparency alone meant innocence. When we disagreed about something, she'd go quiet. Not angry, just distant. Hours would pass. Sometimes a whole night. I'd stare at my phone, telling myself not to overthink it. Telling myself she just needed time. Later, I'd find out she wasn't quiet with him. I wouldn't find out directly. Not at first. It came out in small ways. She'd reference something we argued about, but with his words in it. His phrasing. His perspective. Sometimes she'd say, "He thinks you're being too hard on me." Or, "He said I should focus on myself right now." I remember the first time that really hit me. I was standing in my kitchen, phone in my hand, rereading a message she'd just sent. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't dramatic. Just firm. Distant. And all I could think was, she's already talked to him about this. I brushed it off. I always did. Told myself it didn't matter who she talked to, as long as she eventually talked to me. But eventually started stretching. Sometimes I'd wait hours. Sometimes a whole day. I'd write drafts of messages and delete them. I didn't want to seem needy. I didn't want to pressure her. I wanted to be the calm one. The stable one. The one she could rely on. What I didn't notice was how often relying on me meant postponing me. There was a night we were supposed to meet. Nothing fancy. Just dinner. She canceled an hour before, said she wasn't feeling great. I told her it was fine. I meant it. Later that night, I saw her post something online. Not obvious. Just a song lyric. Something about feeling understood. I didn't comment. I didn't like it. I just closed the app and sat there longer than I should have. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. That became a pattern too. Silence. Distance. Then normalcy. As if the waiting never happened. As if I hadn't rearranged my emotions around her absence. Every time I felt the urge to say something, I stopped myself. I told myself I was being dramatic. That relationships require patience. That love isn't about control. And maybe that's true. But love also isn't about being kept on standby. The strange thing is, I didn't feel angry. Not yet. Mostly I felt confused. A low, constant confusion that made me question my own reactions. I'd wonder if I was imagining things. If I was reading too much into harmless situations. She never said she was choosing him over me. She never had to. The choices showed up on their own. I was the one who waited. He was the one who knew. Sometimes she'd say, "You don't need to worry. You're my boyfriend." And I'd feel relief, followed by something heavier I couldn't name. Because being her boyfriend didn't seem to stop her from giving him everything I was waiting for. I didn't know it yet, but I was slowly being trained. Trained to accept delays. Trained to lower expectations. Trained to be grateful for whatever attention arrived after she'd finished giving someone else her emotional energy. I thought that made me loyal. I didn't realize it was making me invisible. And the worst part is this. If nothing had changed, I probably would have stayed like that. Waiting. Adjusting. Telling myself this was normal. But something happened next that made it impossible to keep pretending. Not a fight. Not a confession. Just a moment so small it would have been easy to miss. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I didn't confront her after that. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what I was accusing her of. That's the strange part about being a backup. There's no clear betrayal to point at. No single message you can hold up and say, this is where it broke. Everything happens in the margins. In timing. And who knows what before you do. After that canceled dinner, things went back to normal. At least on the surface. She texted me like usual. Sent memes. Asked about my day. Said she missed me. And I let myself relax again. Even though something in me stayed tense, like a muscle that wouldn't unclench. I started noticing how often she checked her phone when we were together. Not in a guilty way. More instinctively. Like she was waiting for something. Sometimes she'd smile at the screen, then catch herself and put it face down. If I asked who it was, she'd answer casually. Always the same name. I didn't push. I told myself trust meant not needing to investigate. But trust also assumes you're being told the whole story. And slowly, I realized I was always hearing the ending, never the beginning. We had an argument one night. Nothing huge. Just one of those conversations where neither person feels heard. I tried to explain how I felt dismissed sometimes. She got quiet. Said she was overwhelmed. Said she didn't want to talk right now. I apologized, even though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. Then she stopped responding. An hour passed. Then two. I sat on my couch, phone in my hand, watching the screen like it might change its mind. I told myself she was cooling off, that she needed space. I didn't want to be the guy who pushes when someone asks for time. Eventually, I fell asleep. The next morning, she texted me like nothing happened. Good morning. No mention of the conversation. No acknowledgement of the silence. I stared at the message longer than usual, trying to decide how to respond without reopening something she clearly didn't want to talk about. Later that day, she casually referenced something I'd said the night before, but twisted slightly, framed through someone else's words. She said, "He thinks you're projecting your stress onto me." I remember the exact moment my stomach dropped. Because that wasn't my language. That wasn't her language either. That was his. I asked, gently, "Did you talk to him about last night?" She didn't deny it. She shrugged. Said, "Yeah, I needed someone to talk to. You were part of it. So I didn't want to burden you." The logic didn't make sense. But I nodded anyway. That became the pattern. Whenever we disagreed, she processed it with him first. By the time she came back to me, her mind was already made up. I wasn't part of the resolution. I was the aftermath. Sometimes I'd find out because she'd quote him directly. Sometimes because her tone changed, firmer, more distant, like she'd already rehearsed the conversation. Sometimes I found out because he knew things. That part crept up on me slowly. The first message from him came after another disagreement. It was late. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation in my head. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message said, "Hey man, she's just emotional right now. Give her space." I sat up. I hadn't told anyone we argued. I hadn't posted anything. I hadn't reached out. Yet somehow, he knew. Not just that we argued, but how she felt about it. I didn't respond. A few minutes later, another message came in. "She'll calm down. She always does." That line stayed with me. She always does. Like this was routine. Like he'd seen it happen enough times to be confident in the outcome. I finally replied, short and polite. I didn't ask for advice. He sent back a laughing emoji. Nothing else. When I brought it up to her later, she brushed it off. Said he was just trying to help. Said I was misreading it. Said I should appreciate that people cared about her. I felt embarrassed for even mentioning it. After that, the messages didn't stop. They didn't happen every day, just often enough to feel intentional. Usually when she wasn't responding to me. Usually when I was waiting. Sometimes he'd reference things she liked. Songs she listened to when she was upset. Things she did when she needed comfort. Intimate details that didn't belong to someone who was just a friend. Once, after she ignored me for an entire evening, he sent a message that made my hands shake. "You should probably let her breathe tonight. She's not in the mood to deal with you." I stared at that line for a long time. Not because it was cruel, but because it was confident. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't speculating. He was reporting. That's when the thought finally formed, quietly, reluctantly, and once it did, it wouldn't go away. I'm not competing with him for her attention. I'm filling the gaps he leaves. Every time she needed reassurance, she came to me. Every time she needed excitement, validation, or escape, she went to him. I was the stable place she landed when everything else burned out. I was the backup plan. And the realization didn't hit like a punch. It hit like gravity. Suddenly, everything made sense. The waiting, the silence, the way she never fully chose a side, the way I was always asked to understand, adjust, forgive. I didn't say anything yet, but something in me started pulling back, not dramatically, not intentionally, just instinctively, like my body understood the truth before my mind was ready to admit it. And once that shift started, there was no going back. After that realization settled in, I tried to tell myself I was overreacting. That's what you do when the truth is too inconvenient. You look for ways to soften it. You rename it. You call it insecurity. You call it imagination. Anything but what it is. I didn't want to believe I was just a placeholder in my own relationship. So I kept going, kept showing up, kept answering, kept waiting. But once you start seeing patterns, your brain stops protecting you from them. The next disagreement wasn't even serious. We were talking about weekend plans. She wanted to keep things open. I wanted something concrete. I asked if we could just decide on one day instead of maybe, possibly, if nothing else came up. She sighed, said I was making it complicated. I told her I just wanted to know where I stood. She went quiet again. This time, I didn't text her afterward. I didn't apologize. I didn't chase the silence. I sat with it, telling myself I was allowed to wait for her to come back to the conversation. An hour passed. Then two. My phone buzzed. It wasn't her. It was him. You should relax, the message said. She feels pressured when you push like that. I stared at the screen, my chest tight. I hadn't told him anything. Not a word. And yet he knew exactly what we talked about. Not generally. Specifically. The same phrasing. The same complaint. I typed out a response, erased it, typed again. My hands felt clumsy, like I was stepping into a space I wasn't meant to be in. Why are you messaging me about this? I finally sent. There was a pause. Long enough to feel deliberate. Then, because she vents to me. I'm just being honest with you. That sentence did something to me. Not because of what it said, but because of how normal he made it sound. Like it was obvious. Like I was the strange one for questioning it. She tells you everything? I asked. Pretty much, he replied. We're close. Close. I didn't respond after that. I set my phone down and just sat there, staring at the wall, feeling something cold move through me. I wasn't angry yet. I was embarrassed. Embarrassed that I'd been defending this situation in my head. Embarrassed that I'd been calling myself secure when really I'd just been silent. Embarrassed that someone outside my relationship knew more about its fragile moments than I did. Later that night, she texted me like nothing had happened. Hey, sorry I went quiet. I just needed time. I asked her, carefully, did you talk to him again? She didn't answer right away. When she did, she said, why does that matter? That question hit harder than a yes or no. I told her it made me uncomfortable, that it felt like our private moments weren't private, that I didn't like someone else being brought into every disagreement before we'd even finished talking. She accused me of being controlling, said I was trying to isolate her, said I should trust her more. I backed off immediately. That's the part one regret most. How fast I folded. How quickly I let her turn my discomfort into something shameful. I apologized again, even though something deep inside me was screaming that this wasn't normal. After that, the messages from him changed. They became bolder, less polite, less disguised as concern. One night, after she ignored me for hours, he sent, she's with me right now. Don't worry. I froze. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't ask. I didn't reply. I just sat there, heart pounding, staring at those words like they might rearrange themselves into something harmless. The next day, when I asked her about it, she laughed, said he was joking, said they just talked on the phone, said I was reading too much into everything again. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But belief started feeling like effort, like I was actively choosing not to see what was right in front of me. The worst part wasn't the jealousy. It was the humiliation. The way he spoke to me like I was an obstacle, not a partner. The way he positioned himself as the one who understood her moods, her needs, her reactions, while I was treated like someone who needed instructions. He knew when to message me. Always when she was distant. Always when I was waiting. It felt intentional, like he wanted me to know my place. And slowly, painfully, I started to understand something that changed the way I saw everything. She wasn't choosing him over me in a dramatic way. She was choosing access. She got excitement from him, validation, attention without responsibility. And she got stability from me, patience, forgiveness. A place to land when things felt overwhelming. She didn't see that as betrayal. She saw it as balance. I saw it as being divided into parts, and being given the smallest one. That's when I stopped asking myself if I was overreacting, and started asking myself a much harder question. Why am I still here? I didn't have the answer yet, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of finding it. I didn't announce the change. That's the thing about real shifts. They don't come with speeches. They happen internally, first. A recalibration so subtle that even you don't notice it right away. I just stopped leaning forward. Stopped checking my phone every few minutes. Stopped rereading messages to find hidden meanings. Stopped asking follow-up questions that were really just disguised pleas for reassurance. At first, she didn't notice. She still took hours to reply. Still disappeared mid-conversation. Still resurfaced with casual apologies that sounded rehearsed, like lines she'd practiced enough times to make them sound sincere. And I still replied. But something was different. My replies were shorter, neutral, unemotional, not cold, just contained. I answered questions without expanding them. I acknowledged messages without feeding them. I didn't offer comfort she hadn't asked for. I didn't fill the silence when she created it. That's when he noticed. The first message came late at night. "You okay?" he wrote. "You seem quiet lately." I almost laughed. Quiet. As if silence was a malfunction. As if my role was to constantly react, respond, reassure, and my absence from that script had triggered an alert. I didn't reply. The next day, she texted me out of the blue. "Are you mad at me?" I stared at that question for a long time. Because it wasn't concern. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't even accountability. It was inventory management. She was checking whether I was still available in the same way, whether I still occupied the same slot. "I'm not mad," I replied. "Just tired." "Tired of what?" she asked. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because for once, I wasn't going to explain myself into being understood. That night, he messaged again. "She's feeling insecure. You should reassure her." That was it. That was the moment something hardened inside me. Not anger. Not jealousy. Clarity. I realized something that made my stomach drop. He wasn't competing with me. He was coordinating. They weren't confused about boundaries. They were comfortable crossing them. And the reason it worked was because I had been absorbing all the discomfort quietly, making room for everyone else's feelings while shrinking my own. I thought about all the times she'd gone silent after an argument, and how he'd always known. All the times she'd dismissed my concerns, and how he'd defended her choices. All the times he'd positioned himself as the translator of her emotions, as if she were too fragile to speak directly, and I were too dense to understand without guidance. I wasn't her partner. I was her cushion, the place she fell back on when things didn't go her way. The person who stayed calm while she explored chaos elsewhere. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I turned my phone off. Not on silent. Off. And for the first time in a long time, I slept through the night. The next morning, I woke up to missed calls. Messages. Notifications stacked on top of each other like panic in digital form. Her messages came first. "Where did you go? Why didn't you answer? Are you okay?" This isn't funny. Then his. "She's freaking out. You need to respond. You're being immature." Immature. That word used to make me second-guess myself. Used to pull me back into apologizing for having limits. This time, it did nothing. I took a shower. Made coffee. Went to work. Lived my day without carrying someone else's emotional temperature in my pocket. When I finally turned my phone back on that evening, I had one last message from her. "Please don't do this. I need you." I read it twice. And that's when it hit me, not as a thought, but as a feeling. She didn't miss me. She missed the access. The safety net. The certainty that no matter what happened with him, I would still be there, steady and forgiving and available. I replied with a single sentence. "I can't keep doing this." She called immediately. I let it ring. Then she texted. "What does that mean? Are you breaking up with me? Did someone put this idea in your head?" That last message told me everything. She couldn't imagine this decision coming from me. From my own reflection. My own exhaustion. My own worth. It had to be someone else's influence. I didn't answer that night either. And that's when the dynamic finally broke. Because when you stop playing your assigned role, people panic. Not because they care, but because the system they built around you starts to fail. The next message didn't come from him. It came from her. Longer. Messier. Desperate. And for the first time, it wasn't controlled. She was losing the backup plan. And she could feel it. The messages didn't stop. They changed shape. At first, they were frantic, disorganized, full of questions that didn't really want answers. They wanted reassurance. Then they became softer, apologetic, carefully worded. I know I haven't been fair. I didn't realize how much pressure you were under. You know I care about you, right? That one almost got me. Not because it was convincing, but because a part of me still wanted it to be true. But something had shifted. I could feel it in my body. The constant tightness in my chest was gone. The background anxiety that used to hum through my day had gone quiet, like a machine finally switched off. I wasn't floating. I was grounded. And for the first time, I could see the situation without wanting it to be something else. She didn't want to fix us. She wanted to restore balance, her balance. Because without me responding the way I used to, the whole structure started leaning. That evening, she showed up at my place unannounced. I knew it was her before I even opened the door. I could hear her breathing on the other side. Fast, shallow, controlled, but barely. When I opened it, she didn't rush in like she usually did. She stood there, hands clenched in the sleeves of her jacket, eyes scanning my face like she was looking for something familiar, something stable, something she wasn't finding. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. I stepped aside and let her in. She looked around like she'd never been there before, like the space felt different now. And it was, because I was different in it. "I'm not doing anything," I said finally. "I'm just not pretending anymore." She frowned. "Pretending about what?" I leaned against the counter, crossed my arms, not defensively, just comfortably. "About being okay with being second." Her face changed. Not shock, not guilt, recognition. "You're not second," she said quickly. Too quickly. "Why would you even think that?" I smiled. Not bitterly, not sarcastically. Just tired. "Because every time we fight, he knows before I do," I said. "Because when you disappear, he explains it to me. Because when I ask for time, I'm told to wait, but he gets answers instantly." She opened her mouth, then closed it. "That's not what it looks like," she said. "It always is," I replied. Silence stretched between us. Thick, honest. Finally, she said it. "He's just a friend." I nodded slowly. "Then why does he send me messages about what you're wearing?" I asked. "Why does he tell me when you're upset with me? Why does he know when you're ignoring me? And why does he enjoy it?" Her eyes flicked away. That was enough. I exhaled. Deep. Controlled. "I'm done being the backup," I said. "I don't want explanations. I don't want reassurance. I don't want to compete with someone who already knows your moves." She stepped closer. "You're overreacting." That phrase used to flatten me. This time it slid off. "No," I said calmly. "I'm reacting appropriately, just later than I should have." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it without thinking. And that was the mistake. I saw the name on the screen. The same one. The always there one. I laughed softly. "Go ahead," I said. "Answer him." She hesitated. That hesitation said more than any confession ever could. "I don't need to," she said, locking the phone. "I'm here with you." I shook my head. "That's the problem," I said. "You only come to me when things feel unstable elsewhere." Her voice cracked. "That's not fair." "Neither was being treated like an option," I replied. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Not because I was louder, because I was unmoved. "Say it," I said gently. "Say what?" "That he's more than a friend." Her jaw tightened. "I don't know what he is," she said. "But he's not my boyfriend." I smiled again. Slower this time. "Then go cry to him," I said. "Because I'm not playing this role anymore." She stepped back like I'd pushed her. "That's cruel," she whispered. "No," I said. "This is boundaries." She left without yelling, without slamming the door. And for the first time, I didn't chase her silence. An hour later, my phone buzzed. It was him. "Congrats," he wrote. "You finally walked away." I stared at that message longer than I expected to. Then I typed back. "Congratulations to you too," I replied. "She's all yours now." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, a message came through. "That's not what I meant." I smiled. "Funny," I typed. "That's exactly what you've been acting like." No reply. Minutes passed. Then another message. "She's upset. She says you're being cold." I locked my phone, because I already knew what was coming next. When the backup plan removes himself, everyone scrambles. And the people who thrived in the middle suddenly have nowhere to stand. The silence didn't last. It never does. People who are used to having access don't accept its removal quietly. They push. They test. They look for cracks. The next morning, I woke up to a string of messages from her that had come in overnight. Not angry, not defensive, panicked. I couldn't sleep. Can we please talk? I think we're making a mistake. Please don't shut me out like this. I read them once, then again, and I noticed something important. Not one of them asked how I felt. They were all about restoration, about getting things back to where they were, where she felt safe, certain, and centered. I didn't reply, not out of spite, out of clarity. Around noon, my phone rang. An unknown number. I already knew who it was. I answered. Her voice broke immediately. I went to him, she said. I closed my eyes slowly. Okay, I replied. There was a pause on the line. She hadn't expected that response. I told him everything, she continued. I told him I needed him, that I felt abandoned, that I felt stupid for letting things get this far. Another pause. And I asked. He said I misunderstood, she whispered. He said he never promised me anything. I leaned back in my chair. Of course he did. He said you were always the one I chose, she added quickly. That he never meant to come between us. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable it hurt. And you believed him? I asked. I wanted to, she admitted. But then he asked why I was calling him instead of you. There it was. The pivot. The moment where the illusion cracked. She kept talking, faster now, like she was afraid I'd hang up. He said if I wanted something serious, I should work it out with you. That he didn't want drama. That he didn't want to be involved. I stayed quiet. Because silence forces people to keep going. And then, she said, her voice shaking, he told me to stop messaging him. That one landed. Not because I felt satisfaction. Because I felt confirmation. So now you're calling me, I said calmly. Yes, she said, almost pleading. Because I don't know what's happening anymore. Everything feels upside down. I inhaled slowly. You're not confused, I said. You're displaced. She didn't answer. You built something that worked for you, I continued. And now it doesn't. That doesn't mean you lost love. It means you lost control. That's not fair, she said weakly. No, I replied. It's accurate. She started crying then. Not the quiet kind. The messy kind. The kind that comes when someone realizes the ground they were standing on was never solid. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said between breaths. I know, I said. That surprised her. But you did, I added. Repeatedly. And the worst part is, you didn't even notice. I need you, she said. Please don't walk away now. I closed my eyes. There was a version of me, not that long ago, who would have rushed back into that sentence. Who would have wrapped it in hope and called it reconciliation. That version of me was gone. You don't need me, I said gently. You need someone to fill the space that just collapsed. That's you, she said quickly. It's always been you. No, I replied. It's been the role I played. Another long silence. Then she asked the question she'd been avoiding since the beginning. Are you seeing someone else? I smiled faintly. No, I said. I'm seeing myself clearly for the first time. She sobbed harder. I'll cut him off, she said. I swear. I'll block him. I'll do anything. I opened my eyes. That's not how this works, I said. You don't fix a pattern by deleting a contact. So what do you want from me? She asked desperately. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, life was moving. People walking. Cars passing. The world continuing. Completely indifferent to the emotional storm she was standing in. I want you to stop looking for safety in other people, I said. And I want to stop being the place you land when everything else fails. Her breathing slowed. That sounds like goodbye, she whispered. It is, I said softly. She didn't scream. She didn't argue. She just went quiet. And in that quiet, I could hear something else for the first time. Acceptance. I don't recognize you anymore, she said finally. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. That makes two of us, I replied. The call ended without ceremony. No dramatic final words. Just an empty line. Later that night, my phone buzzed one last time. A message from him. She's losing it, he wrote. This got too messy. I'm out. I stared at the screen. Then I typed back. That's what happens when you enjoy the middle but refuse the responsibility. No response. I blocked the number. For the first time since all of this began, there was no one left triangulating my life. No one explaining her to me. No one reporting me to her. Just silence. And strangely, peace. Time didn't rush in to fill the space she left. It moved carefully, quietly, like it was waiting to see if I would panic and try to replace what was gone. I didn't. The first few days felt strange, not lonely exactly, just unfamiliar. My phone stayed still. No constant buzzing. No sudden mood shifts based on unread messages. No third party narrating my own relationship back to me. I realized how loud my life had been before. Not in sound, but in tension. I had been living in a state of constant readiness. Ready to explain myself. Ready to reassure. Ready to adjust. Ready to wait. Ready to forgive things that were never really addressed. Without that wait, my days stretched out in a way I wasn't used to. I slept better. I ate without checking my phone. I caught myself smiling at nothing. Not because I was happy, but because I was finally unburdened. About a week later, she tried again. Not directly. Through a friend. She's not doing well, the message said. She feels like she ruined everything. She just wants to talk, for closure. Closure. That word used to pull me in every time. It sounded mature, responsible, kind. But I'd learned something important. People don't ask for closure when they want to understand. They ask for it when they want relief from guilt. I replied once. I'm not angry, but I'm not reopening this either. I wish her well. That was it. No explanations. No conditions. No emotional labor attached. The message was read. No reply came back. Weeks passed. Then months. Every now and then, I heard pieces of the aftermath through mutual circles. Not details, just outlines. She tried to talk to him again. He didn't respond. She posted things online that were meant to be noticed. Vague captions. Late-night quotes about regret and timing and fate. I didn't react. Not because I was pretending not to care, but because I finally understood the difference between caring and participating. One evening, months later, I ran into her by accident. A grocery store. Nothing dramatic. No music swelling. No cinematic pause. She looked different. Not bad. Just thinner. Tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. She saw me first. I could tell because she froze for half a second before turning her cart slightly, like she was deciding whether to disappear. She didn't. She walked over. Hey, she said softly. Hey, I replied. We stood there, surrounded by shelves of ordinary things, cereal boxes, canned soup, paper towels. The kind of place where life continues regardless of emotional history. I didn't think I'd see you, she said. I didn't either, I replied. She nodded, eyes flicking down to the floor. I'm sorry, she said. For everything. I believed her. That surprised me. I know, I said. She looked up then. Really looked. You seem different, she said. Calmer. I smiled slightly. I am. She hesitated. I wish I hadn't taken you for granted. I didn't rush to comfort her. I didn't reassure her that she wasn't a bad person. I just told the truth. So do I said. But that's how I learned my value. There was nothing else to say. We stood there for a moment longer. Not awkward, just complete. Then she nodded once. Take care, she said. You too, I replied. And that was it. No dramatic ending. No final confrontation. Just two people walking in opposite directions, carrying very different lessons. Later that night, I thought about something she'd once said to me, back when I was still the backup. You're always there, she'd said. That's what I love about you. At the time, I'd taken it as a compliment. Now I understood what it really meant. She loved my availability, my patience, my willingness to stay. But love that only values what you provide, and not who you are, is not love. It's convenience. And I had finally stopped being convenient. I didn't win anything by leaving. I didn't get revenge. I didn't prove anything to anyone else. What I gained was quieter and far more permanent. Self-respect. The kind that doesn't need validation. The kind that doesn't wait to be chosen. The kind that walks away when it realizes it's being treated as an option. And if you're listening to this story and something in it feels uncomfortably familiar, if you've ever been the one who waited, the one who was patient, the one who was always there, I hope you hear this part clearly. You don't need to be chosen twice. You don't need to compete with shadows. And you don't need to stay in a place where your value is only recognized when you're gone. Sometimes, the quietest decision changes everything. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing. There are more stories like this, honest ones, waiting ahead.